Ethan Vessels, lawyer in Marietta, Ohio. I am licensed both in Ohio and West Virginia. Today's question is, am I a bad person if I want compensation for my injuries? Am I greedy if I want compensation if I've been injured because of someone else's fault? Nearly 50% of the time when I have new clients in my office who have been injured, they start the conversation by saying, "We are not the type of people to sue people, but," or "We're not out to get rich, but." Always an apology for being in my office. And in fact, the insurance industry in recent years has been very successful at demonizing anyone who expects or asks for reasonable compensation for their injuries. Jurors are buying into it as well. People are saying, "Why should John Doe get money for his injuries? No one paid me when I got hurt." People think that personal injury plaintiffs are malingering. They're faking their injuries. Listen, I'm a Republican. I believe in low taxes. I believe in small government. I believe that able-bodied people should work. I do not believe in handouts. But on this issue, my party usually is wrong. And I used to be this way too. But thankfully, the law is mostly that injured people are entitled to reasonable compensation when they are injured because of someone else's fault. And why shouldn't this be the case? Why should it be any different than any other type of case where damage is suffered? If you are out in your yard playing baseball with your son or daughter and you hit the baseball through your neighbor's window, you are obligated to pay your neighbor for the full value of the window. No one disputes this. A few years ago I tried an eminent domain case, and that means the state had taken my client's property in order to build a road. At trial, the law is that the state has to provide reasonable compensation for the property that they took, and we had a dispute over how much the reasonable compensation would be. At trial, I had a very difficult time during the jury selection getting jurors who would admit that they would be fair to the state. Many of the jurors outright said that they could not be fair to the state. No one had any qualms about fully compensating the landowner. Yet for some reason, if someone breaks a leg and misses 2 months of work, people become skeptical. Why is this? It's because of the stories that we've all heard. We've all heard the story about the burglar who breaks into someone's house and then gets injured during the burglary and then sues the homeowner. Or we believe the insurance company commercials that talk about the con artists who are out causing rear-end accidents so that they can obtain personal injury settlements. I will tell you that virtually all of these stories are unequivocally false. They are mere urban legends. And of course, the most famous story of all involving personal injuries is the McDonald's hot coffee case. Woman spills coffee on her lap, she sues, gets millions. That's outrageous. Coffee's supposed to be hot. The whole country was in an uproar. They even made a Seinfeld episode about it. You need to know the whole story. Mrs. Liebeck, that's the woman who spilled the coffee in her lap in 1992, went to a McDonald's drive-thru. She was not the driver. She was a passenger in the car. When she got her coffee, she attempted to put the cream and sugar in the coffee and it spilled in her lap. And what she found out was that the coffee wasn't just hot, it was scalding hot. She ended up getting third-degree burns over 6% of her body surface. She spent 8 days in the hospital and she had to undergo several skin grafting operations. Mrs. Liebeck originally asked McDonald's for $20,000 to compensate her for her pain and suffering. McDonald's said, "No, we're not at fault." So during the lawsuit and the lead up to the lawsuit and the trial, her lawyers found out things about McDonald's hot coffee. They found out that McDonald's served their coffee 40 to 50 degrees hotter than what your average coffee maker could be made for residential use, your Mr. Coffee, for instance. McDonald's was also serving its coffee substantially hotter than any of its competitors. At trial, McDonald's quality assurance manager testified that they knew that any liquid served over 140 degrees was a burn hazard. Yet they purposefully and intentionally served their coffee at 185 degrees. Worse yet, in the 10 years before Mrs. Liebeck's incident, McDonald's had received 700 complaints from customers who had spilled hot coffee and had burned themselves. So the jury heard all of this and returned a verdict, and the verdict was $200,000 to compensate Mrs. Liebeck for her pain, suffering, medical bills, and all the expenses related to her injury. These were the compensatory damages. And the jury further reduced that by 20% to account for Mrs. Liebeck's negligence in spilling the coffee to begin with. The jury also awarded $2.7 million in punitive damages to punish McDonald's for serving coffee that they knew was a hazard. That amounted to 2 days' worth of sales of coffee for McDonald's at the time. The judge later reduced that to $480,000. Those were the facts of the case, yet all that has ever been reported was woman gets millions for spilled coffee. So now that you know the facts, if you were a juror, how would you have voted? Who was being greedy? Mrs. Liebeck or McDonald's? I've done this type of work for a number of years now, both for plaintiffs and defendants. And I can say in my personal experience, I have never seen a jury award a truly outrageous amount for a person's injuries. However, I've seen on a number of occasions juries withhold any recovery for deserving plaintiffs. It's a shame when that happens. So this whole belief that there's a runaway jury system and the tort system needs to be reformed is really not true. So the answer to the question is no. You should feel no shame in asking for reasonable compensation for your injuries, including compensation for pain and suffering. I hope this has been helpful. If you have more questions or you have a question about one of your own injuries, please visit my website or call me and you can obtain a free copy of my book, I Have Been Injured, What Are My Legal Rights? Thank you.